At the end of this presentation, you have a very important decision to make for your careers. In fact, you've already made several of them this morning. Now, if I were to ask you, how much information do you think you need to make a good decision? What do you think your answer would be? 100%? How many of you think you can make a good decision with 100% of the available information? Okay. You're all CPCUs, right? So you've all made some pretty good decisions. I would expect more hands up. That's okay, it's early. Maybe you're not awake yet. How about 50% of the information? Anyone still confident they can make a good decision? 50% of the information, please raise your hand. Tony's always confident, so right? Anyone else? Couple? Okay. 20%? 10%? 3 10,000ths of 1%? Anyone? Anybody here want me to make a decision for your career based on 3 10,000ths of 1% of the information about you? Probably not. Here's the thing, we're all doing this every single second of every single day, not just for ourselves, but for each other. Our brains can't be everywhere at once. So the 11 million sensory inputs that are hitting us every second get filtered out. And the 40, not 40,000, 40 decimal point that we are left with are chosen for us by our brains based on what it already believes to be true. Our brains are not very good at processing large amounts of information, but they're very, very good at sorting into been there, done that, and that might kill me. And the 40 pieces per second you get to process to make a decision are the ones your brain thinks maybe might kill you. Now, this physiology was very helpful to us back when we lived in caves and we stepped out of our cave and we had to know if the next thing we saw was something we could eat or something that would eat us. If the next person we met was in our tribe and cooperating with us or not in our tribe and a potential threat. These were split-second life and death decisions every second of every day, so our brains got really good at this. Now, most of us have evolved over time, socially, emotionally, intellectually. Please don't read the comments section on any website. It will completely undo what I just said. But most of us have evolved, but that physiology is still with us. And it still drives our decision making if we don't intervene, if we don't know it's there. We can overcome it, but we'll never get rid of it. It's too ingrained in us. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting down in your house, really comfortable, reflecting on what a great day you've had at I-Day. It'll happen, trust me. Not that long from now, guys, come on, project with me. And the person that you love most in the world, that you trust most in the world, walks in and sits down and says, we need to talk. What does that do to you? Your heart starts racing, you maybe start to sweat, right? Then you start thinking, what did I do? What did they do? What happens? Well, you feel a certain way because of this input. And then your brain starts to tell you a story based on how you're feeling. Your thinking is catching up to your feeling almost all the time. Now, if our gut reactions are in the driver's seat, it's probably worth knowing where they come from, right? Way back in your past, when you were first born, before you were even born, everybody that knew your mother said, is it a boy or a girl? The world had certain expectations of you. before you were even here. Then you came out. All of you are out. Excellent. Just checking. It's early. And you started to adopt the values and the norms of the society around you. You started to learn what the rules of your household were so you wouldn't get put in time out or get spanked if you're old enough to be a kid. Some of us, right? When you got to school, you had to learn the rules of school. Because if you didn't behave in school, you got sent to the principal's office or you got in trouble and you had to go to detention. When you got a little older, right, you needed a job, so you had to assimilate. You had to figure this out, figure out these rules. And our socialization isn't complete until we've internalized these values to the point that nobody else has to police us anymore. We're completely self-regulated most of the time, right? All the while this is going on, we're looking at other people to see how they respond to us, how do they treat us. And we start to develop an identity around how the world responds to us. Please raise your hand if you were a star athlete in high school or college. Please raise your hand high enough that I can tell that you're not lying to me. Okay, a couple. So I'm going to just back up, and I'm going to go back into my own past for a moment. I don't have depth perception. When you don't have depth perception, you cannot catch a ball, throw a ball, or hit a ball. I was not very popular in gym class. Is it fair to say that your experience in elementary school was probably a little bit different from mine in that regard? A little bit? A lot bit? Yeah, okay, fair enough. So I developed an identity that I had some sort of a character flaw because I was always last picked in gym. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s I found out, oh, it's a depth perception problem. It's not a character flaw, it's defective. No big deal. But our identities shape who we are and how we think about ourselves and how we interact with the world and how we view others. And we start to make judgments about people relative to our own identities that we've just crafted based on how they treat us. But wait, there's more. We choose our experiences to reinforce our values, our identities, and our judgments about other people. We choose to make our world smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it just about collapses on itself. That's not leadership. Leadership is not about making decisions that are comfortable for me right now in this moment. Leadership is about looking around me and making decisions that are good for as many people from as many different places as possible. Those are the leaders people want to follow. Those are the leaders your companies need to move you forward. We do this so much, so automatically, for so long, without ever thinking about it, that these decisions are driven by what's called unconscious bias. And unconscious bias means we don't even know we're doing it. There are plenty of conscious biases out there too, right? And that goes back to our values and our identities and our judgments of others. But almost every one of you made a decision about where to sit this morning, unless somebody else made it for you, in which case you made a decision to let them. And you probably didn't think a whole lot about that decision, but how many of you sat with people you already know today? Okay, you've got a networking break at the end of the session, and I want every single one of you to go sit somewhere else. Because you cannot network with the people that you work with every day. It doesn't work that way, okay? These unconscious biases drive our decisions in ways we don't even recognize. We will never undo our biases, but we can get beyond them. We can overcome them. I'm going to give you 3 steps to work with today that you can put into practice almost immediately. And practice is the key word because it will take a lifetime to get good at these. I work on these every single day. is put yourself on notice. Notice your response to situations. Notice who you sit with when you come into a room full of people. Notice when you're interacting with someone if you're uncomfortable. Noticing is a good first step. Noticing your biases takes away their power over you. Noticing your biases takes away their power over you. I used to work with a woman. Her name was Deanne. She is a rock star employee. She is the kind of employee that I don't care what team you're on, what company you're with, or what job you have, if you hired her, within a week, she would be the top person on your team, and she would make everybody around her better. You guys know anybody like that? I'm not telling you her last name because I don't want you to go find her, because her new boss will get really mad at me. But that's the kind of person she is. Now, I noticed when I talked to Deanne in the hallway, I was kind of uncomfortable. That didn't make any sense to me. But I noticed it. So I thought about it for a while, and I thought, well, why am I so uncomfortable? I wasn't uncomfortable if we were in meetings together. I wasn't uncomfortable if she came and sat at my desk, but if we were talking in the hallway, I was uncomfortable. So I started thinking about this, tumbling around in my little brain, and I realized Deanne's a whole lot shorter than I am. I'm 5'3". I was not a star basketball player. I don't know if I made that clear. Okay? Almost everybody's taller than me. And because Deanne worked for me and I had so much respect for her as a professional and as a person, when she had to tilt her head to look up at me, I felt like I was making her look up to me metaphorically, and I didn't like that feeling. Now, Deanne was like 4'8". She had to tilt her head up to look at just about everybody. This had nothing to do with something between Deanne and me. This was a problem between my left ear and my right ear. And once I figured out what the problem was, I was like, well, that's stupid, Amy, get over it. So I did. But it makes me wonder, how many people do you meet that you talk to them a couple times, and you think, ooh, I don't know about that. And you withdraw just a little bit from the relationship. And you maybe don't get as much out of it as you could because you're a little standoffish with that person. Because there's something going on between your left ear and your right ear that you haven't stopped to notice. How many relationships are you missing out on? How many great ideas are not coming to you? How many opportunities are you saying no to by holding someone at arm's length for no reason other than, I don't know. Think about what values, what identities, what experiences, what perceptions you're protecting when you notice something like this in yourself. This is simple, but it is really hard to do. When you get good at that, you can move on to step 2. And step 2 is to observe the responses of others. Now, I don't care how small a change is that happens at work, there are going to be different opinions about it. I frequently, when I give these talks at conferences and companies, I say, let's imagine that they changed the soap in the restrooms from liquid soap to foam soap. And I can see people cringe, and I can see other people like, yeah, we're going to change the soap. This is hypothetical, guys. Like, I have no power here. None. But there's always a difference of opinion. I even had people argue during the breaks about which is better, foam soap or liquid soap. Please don't argue about that. Spend your time doing something useful. But there's always a difference of opinion. And that's like the tiniest change I can think of. Think about the big changes that happen at work, or the big changes that happen in your life. Think about when you observe somebody responding differently than you do. What is it that they're bringing? What experience are they bringing to this situation that's different from mine? What are the identities or values or judgments they're protecting with their response? And if you really can't puzzle it out, ask them. You'll learn a lot. But you can file all of these away into your brain and build a database. So you can take step 3. Step 3 is to press your pause button. There is a pause button on your body. And it's G-rated, which is even better. And it's right under your nose. It's called your philtrum. What am I doing? What am I doing when I put my finger on my pause button? Listening, thinking, keeping my mouth shut for just a second. How many times have you get, you can't get them back. Once it's out there, you can't get it back. Use that moment to go through your database and pull the best response from all those that you've been observing, from all of your coworkers who have such different values and identities and judgments and experiences from you, and pull the best one out in that moment. This is how you make better decisions. This is how you lead. No matter where you are in your company, no matter where you are in your career.